Good morning, friends. I'm so glad all of you are here. I invite you to come here as best you can. Roll your neck if that's what you need. If you feel moved, touch your heart or your belly. Shift your butt in the chair to be comfy if you're sitting down. Breathe. Breathe in. Breathe out. What a gift our bodies are. Following the same plan as yesterday and continuing as we enter business meeting, worship that it is now and has already begun. And like before, as we hold the worship, more people will be entering for meeting for business. And I invite you to hold the space as they join us. The message I feel moved to share today is about the abundance of God's power. When we participate in God's power, it is more like being a part of the human body among many other parts than like being the whole body. It's more like being the ear than all the organs, or whatever part you are and whatever part I am. Participating in God's power is more like being an ecosystem with many plants that all rely on each other. Participating in God's power is like a trust fall back into God's arms. Trusting that the power is moving in other people too. I want to start with a personal story of me not trusting in God's power that happened a few months ago. I was at quarterly meeting in Falmouth quarterly meeting in Brunswick, Maine. And many folks from different meetings, including myself, were invited to share about the ministry we were engaged in and what was alive. And my turn was near the end. And shortly before my turn, two people whose ministry often also involves often offering messages vocally, stood and spoke about what was working on their hearts and what was alive for them. And it was powerful and beautiful, and they were so eloquent. And a voice in my head sprung up and said, clearly it's wrong that you are doing the Bible half hour because you're not that good. You're not that eloquent. God's made the right choice. They should be doing it. I feel like that's a sort of reaction that's really common to have. It's like I'm pretending that we're applying for jobs and there's only one position and the best person gets it. It's a little bit like, well, it is, in fact, that I was relying on my own power, my eloquence, whether I could do this rather than God's power. And God's power has enough to go around. That is the beautiful truth. Unlike funds that fund nonprofit positions and only can hire one person, God's power is unlimited. It's not an ecosystem of one planet, one plant on the whole planet, and one seed in one heart. It's an ecosystem of seeds. And there's enough nourishment for every heart. To believe that is to believe that I can be chosen and you can be chosen and you can be chosen and you can be chosen, and your chosenness makes me no less chosen for my role. And my chosenness makes you no less chosen for your role. And our roles might be very different. And it's not what our choice, what roles we get. One of our great healing acts together is to recognize and really see the chosenness of other people so that we can get past the idea that some forms of chosenness are more desirable than others. And so that we can feel seen in how we've been called. And really that happens here. So today's passage is a story of Peter and Andrew, the apostles, struggling to feel like there's enough power from God to go around. Just like me at the quarterly meeting. And it's in the Gospel of Mary, so not part of the Bible, quite. The Gospel of Mary was an early gospel that fell out of use. We know it was pretty widely distributed, we think at least, because several copies have been found. About half of it was found in Coptic. 2 fragments found in Greek. We only have about half the total. And to me, it feels inspired. There are a lot of explanations about why it fell out of use. It definitely challenged patriarchy and the consolidation of power in the first few hundred years of the Christian church around men. It provided an alternative vision of how to trust in chosenness that wasn't based in lineage or descent along a papal line. And it also may have fallen out of use because some people said it wasn't Jewish enough. It's very influenced by Greek thought. And the passage that I'm going to read is after, near the end. It is the end, actually. It's after Jesus has made a resurrection appearance to the disciples. The disciples, like in the other gospels, are afraid. Jesus has died. They're worried in this gospel that they're going to get killed too. They're hiding. And Mary comforts them. In this gospel, she's shown to be a full apostle who says to them to have faith and trust. And she turns them back to the word. She turns them back to the teachings of Jesus. And Peter turns to her and asks her for more. He says to tell them what secret teachings she's had from the Savior. And she goes on to share a vision. And it's a vision of the soul finding out its true nature and true reality and ridding itself from attachments that are in its way. It's a vision of spiritually maturing. And she closes. And that is where our passage picks up. This is reading from a translation of the Coptic version. After Mary had said these things, that's the vision, she was silent, since it was up to this point that the Savior had spoken to her. Andrew responded, addressing the brothers and sisters, "Say what you will about this thing she has said, but I do not believe that the Savior said these things. For indeed, these teachings are strange ideas." Peter responded, bringing up similar concerns. He questioned them about the Savior. Did he then speak with a woman in private without our knowing about it? Are we to turn around and listen to her? Did he choose her over us? Then Mary wept and said to Peter, "My brother Peter, what are you imagining? Do you think I have thought up these things by myself in my heart, or that I am telling lies about the Savior?" Levi answered, speaking to Peter, "Peter, you have always been a wrathful person. Now I see you contending against the woman like the adversaries. For if the Savior made her worthy, who are you then for your part to reject her? Assuredly, the Savior's knowledge of her is completely reliable. That is why he loved her more than us. Rather, we should be ashamed. We should clothe ourselves with the perfect human, acquire it for ourselves as he commanded us, and announce the good news. not laying down any other rule or law that differs from what the Savior said. And after he had said these things, they started going out to teach and to preach. Peter and Andrew are reacting from a place of that the chosenness is scarce. I want to be clear that Peter and Andrew are both apostles who do great works too. And in a lot of the other gospels, they're less one-dimensional than in this one. They have oversights and they compete for belonging and to be first, and they also do great things. And Peter gets named as the rock. In this one, they're represented to be a little narrower. This is the only portrait we get of them. When I listen with the help of this gospel and this text, it feels clear that we are meant to trust in Mary because her life is bearing fruit. She has let the seed grow. We see her ministering. And Levi in this gospel calls us to respond and go and do what the Savior has asked together. In the Coptic version, they all leave. In the Greek version, only Levi leaves. We don't know what happens with the others. Maybe they kept debating. Friends, I believe that one of our tasks now as a yearly meeting is to look at one another in the eyes and really see each other's gifts and spiritual gifts and help heal from the sense that chosenness is scarce. To really believe and fall backward in trust that God will use us all and that we are all chosen. And that this can clear the way for truly welcoming ministry through each other in different forms. Henry Nouwen writes or said, "If you believe you are chosen, God gives you eyes to see the chosenness of others." What does it mean to not try to be like each other, but be participating in God's power together in many different ways? What is it like for us to be ready to recognize and affirm the chosenness of others in our meetings when it's different from what we expect and different from what we want to hear, when it sounds strange? And how do we test together? Because not everything we do is from God. How do we know when it's in fact something God has chosen someone to tell us? Like in the Gospel of Mary, I believe we can look at the harvests we are gathering and we can listen inside deeply together. We can question our scarcity thinking about God's abundance and let it go to better welcome each other in participation in God's power. I'm going to reread the passage, and this time I'm going to read one of the Greek fragments. Of the same passage. After she had said these words, Mary was silent, for the Savior had spoken up to this point. Andrew said, "Brothers, what is your opinion of what was just said? Indeed, I do not believe that the Savior said these things. For what she said appears to give views that are different from his thought." After examining these matters, Peter said, "Has the Savior spoken secretly to a woman and not openly so that we would all hear? Surely he did not want to show that she is more worthy than we are." The Greek version misses Mary weeping and questioning, "Have you thought I made these up?" and simply has the words, "about the Savior. Are you thinking I'm making up lies about the Savior?" It jumps to, Levi said to Peter, "Peter, you are always ready to give way to your perpetual inclination to anger. And even now you are doing exactly that by questioning the woman as though you're her adversary. If the Savior considered her to be worthy, who are you to disregard her? For he knew her completely and loved her steadfastly. Rather, we should be ashamed, and once we have clothed ourselves with the perfect human, we should do what we were commanded. We should announce the good news as the Savior said, and not be laying down any rules or making laws." After he had said these things, Levi left and began to announce the good news.